listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a non-judgmental infidelity coach. If you are engaging in anything you think counts as infidelity, I can help you deal with your feelings, clarify what you want, and make decisions about what you're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. A lot of the so-called advice that's out there for people who are cheating is little more than thinly veiled judgment, but that is not what I provide. I give you guidance and support that respects the fullness of your humanity and the complexity of your situation, no matter what you're doing. When you're ready to resolve your infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you, there are two ways you can have me as your coach. We can work together one-on-one via Zoom, or you can enroll in my self-guided course, which offers teachings and assignments that go beyond what I share on the podcast. To get started on either of these options, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Okay, I could have called today's episode a few different things. I could have called it having an affair with an old flame, or I could have called it having an affair with someone you had a relationship with a long time ago. Or I could have even called it having an affair with your former spouse, because that is a thing. Some people have affairs with their ex-spouses. They get married, they get divorced, they get married to someone else, and then they get involved with their ex-spouse as their affair partner. Never done it myself, but I hear it can be kind of fun in a totally crazy way sometimes. When people are in this kind of affair situation or this kind of infidelity situation, when they're in a relationship that involves infidelity and the person they're in the relationship with is someone they were involved with before, people sometimes use particular terms or jargon. Some people talk about lost love, and that language is very meaningful to them. Sometimes people talk about the one that got away. Some people use other terms too. And I've been told there's all kinds of stuff on the internet about the phenomenon I'm describing and all kinds of other words that people use sometimes, but I've never bothered to look into this on the internet because there's all kinds of stuff on the internet about all kinds of things. But perhaps as a result of there possibly being all kinds of stuff out there on the internet about having an affair with someone you were involved with before, the sense I've gotten is that the language of lost love or the various other terms people use, which I can't seem to remember for the life of me, is very meaningful to some people. So if this kind of language or if there's some kind of terminology that's very meaningful to you, by all means, keep using it. But from my perspective, the kind of experience we're talking about here is more important than any specific terminology. From my perspective, the thing that matters is that you're having an affair with someone that you were in a relationship with before at some point in the past. And maybe the relationship was also an affair the first time around, or maybe not. But the second time around, there is definitely an element of infidelity involved. Maybe both members of the couple are in committed relationships with others, or maybe only one member of the affair couple, the second time around couple, is in a committed relationship. But at any rate, there is some kind of infidelity happening in the current relationship that is the second version of a relationship, right? So what I have noticed is that when people are having an affair with someone they were involved with in the past, they tend to see the stakes of that relationship as being very high. Very, 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 very high. And that's saying a lot because people usually see affair relationships as pretty high stakes situations, even when the person they're involved with is not an old lover they've reconnected with. And this can be a recipe for a whole lot of drama. I mean, seeing the stakes of your relationship as incredibly high can be a recipe for a whole lot of drama. And that might not be an entirely bad thing, which I'll say more about in a moment. But it's definitely important to be aware that it could be a pretty torturous thing. And if you like that, if you like drama, by all means, swim in the ocean of your drama and torture and torment. If you love that, I love it for you. But so often what I see is that people don't love torturous drama, but they also don't see the ways in which they are creating it for themselves. So today, we're going to talk about some of the common challenges I see with folks who are having an affair with someone they were involved with at some point in the past. And in doing so, we're also going to talk about how we can inadvertently create a lot of unnecessary drama for ourselves through the way we think about our relationships. And this element of today's podcast probably will apply to you, at least to some extent, even if you aren't having an affair with a long-lost former love or with your former spouse. So here's what happens sometimes. Two people will be involved and they'll have a great thing going, or they'll have something going that's pretty great in at least some ways. And then the relationship will end in a way that seems abrupt or unfair, or seems like it was beyond the control of one or both members of the relationship. It can seem like fate dealt the couple a bad hand, right? And this can seem like a really big deal. It might even seem like a life-defining big deal. It may seem to you like you were yanked out of the arms of your soulmate, or yanked away from your one true love, or taken away from the most amazing person you'd ever met. And again, let me stress that this can seem like a really terrible thing has occurred. It can seem like a cosmic injustice to not be able to continue a relationship with someone you really want to continue a relationship with. If you had a great thing going and that thing ended for reasons that seem grossly unfair, it can seem like the gods have turned against you. I know some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. But then, after the initial sadness and shock dissipates, time passes and life moves forward, and the members of the couple that was ripped apart or were otherwise relieved of their chance at lasting happiness make their way through life. Maybe they think about the one that got away often, maybe like every hour of every day often. Or maybe they think about their lost love now and again, but always with great fondness and more than a tinge of sadness. Or maybe they daydream about maybe, just maybe, meeting up with their lost love again in the future and having another shot at the relationship. Or whatever. The point is, each member of the once and future couple is still thinking about the other. Maybe they're actively in touch, maybe they aren't. But then something happens. Either they get back in touch after a period of disconnection, maybe they randomly run into each other, or maybe they've been in touch, but then all of a sudden one or both parties confesses that they've been longing for the other the whole time. You get the idea. These things can play out in all sorts of interesting ways. And then one thing leads to another, and the relationship begins anew. And the parties involved are deliriously excited to be reunited. They're absolutely thrilled to have a second chance at what seemed like such a good thing, but ended prematurely. They're delighted to have a chance to finally be together like they've been yearning to be. Except at this point, one or both members of the couple are involved with someone else, maybe very involved with someone else. Maybe very married, maybe with children, maybe with young children. And so the new relationship isn't just the second time around for two people who have already been in a relationship. It's also an affair. And this can make for a really messy interaction effect between the challenges that often accompany affair relationships and the heightened hopes and expectations that can come along with reuniting with the one that got away. It can make the whole relationship situation a lot more intense, which may feel intensely great at times, but may not feel so great at other times. Sometimes relationship drama is exciting and makes us feel really alive, and the highs can feel so insanely good. But the lows can feel pretty darn low, and the dramatic ups and downs can get pretty exhausting. So, by all means, enjoy the excitement to whatever extent you want to. But also bear in mind that if you want a way out of the drama, you have to create a way out of the drama. You have to find the less torturous path for yourself. And this is totally possible, but often we don't know how to do it. And so that's what we're here for today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do this. It's important to know that one of the reasons why affairs with old lovers can seem so torturous is because of the way that people sometimes think about these kinds of relationships. Sometimes people believe that if they have reconnected with a former lover, the relationship has to work out the second time around. Sometimes people believe that because they let someone get away one time, they cannot let that person get away again. Sometimes people think that having a second chance at a relationship is proof that the relationship is meant to be, or proof that the relationship is destined to work out, right? These are just a few examples, of course, but the common theme within the way people often think about second chance relationships is it has to work out this time, or it's meant to work out this time. Powers greater than myself or ourselves have determined that we're supposed to be together, and so that's what's got to happen here. Thinking that any relationship has to work out can put us in a pretty tricky position. When we believe that any relationship has to work, we may end up putting up with things that we don't really want to put up with. We may tolerate being miserable in the relationship simply for the sake of not losing the relationship because we think that we have to stay in the relationship. We may behave towards our partner in ways that don't create a very enjoyable dynamic for either one of us. And regardless of whatever we specifically do or don't do when we believe that a relationship has to work out, we may feel pretty desperate and pretty terrible if we think this way. If we think that a relationship has to work, that can feel pretty bad. Because here's the thing. It simply isn't true that any relationship has to work. It just isn't. How could it possibly be true that a particular relationship has to work out? That just isn't reality. And as Byron Katie says, when we argue with reality, we only lose 100% of the time. And as I like to add to that, when we argue with reality, we also feel terrible 100% of the time. But yet, even though it's not a fact that any relationship has to work out, we do often believe that particular relationships have to work out. And again, this may be especially true when we've gotten a second chance with someone we had a relationship with before, but this kind of thinking certainly isn't limited to that kind of relationship situation. Now, this is important. I want to point out that there's a difference between thinking something along the lines of, this relationship has to work out, and thinking something like, I really want this relationship to work out. I want that very badly, and I'm going to do as much as I can to contribute to this relationship continuing and being great. I'm not suggesting that wanting a relationship to work is the issue. But there is a difference between really wanting something and thinking that you have to have something or thinking that you need something. But we humans often get really mixed up about that stuff. We often confuse want with need, perhaps especially within the context of romantic relationships, but then again, maybe not. I definitely have an issue with confusing want with need when it comes to buying scarves and necklaces. I wish I were joking, but I am not. It's probably fair to say that I am a compulsive scarf buyer and maybe a compulsive necklace buyer too. And I might go so far to say that this is probably something I need to work on, but it hasn't killed me yet or driven me to financial ruin. So that's a story for another day. Anyway, what happens when our second chance relationship has an infidelity component to it is that we may believe that the relationship has to work out the second time around, but pragmatically speaking, in order for that to happen, one or both members of the second time around couple may need to attend to some serious life business, like, for instance, getting divorced. And as we've talked about many times on this podcast, some people decide to get divorced and then they get divorced and they do all the stuff that comes with that and they deal with all the feelings and it might be hard, but they get it done. On the other hand, though, some people believe that it is literally impossible for them to get a divorce. I'll say that again because it's so important to emphasize this. Some people believe that it is literally not possible for them to get a divorce. Now, for a lot of people, this is not true. But when we believe things are true, we act accordingly. And so this gets extra fun when we also believe that we have to make our relationship with the one that got away work out since we've gotten a second chance with them. Believing that you can't get divorced is tough enough. Believing that you cannot let the one that got away once get away again is pretty tough too. Believing both of those things together is a recipe for torture. It's a recipe for torture because all of the conflicting feelings these competing beliefs will create, and because of the things you may do when you feel all of these conflicting feelings. And there are lots of things that people do when they have these kinds of conflicting thoughts and feel all the conflicting feelings that these thoughts create. But just for example, on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, you may have a very hard time deciding what to prioritize. Do you focus on keeping up appearances with your spouse because you can't get divorced and you're terrified of them finding out about your affair? Or do you prioritize spending every possible moment with your affair partner, no matter what lies you have to tell in order to do so, because you believe that if you don't, the relationship might not work out, and the possibility of the relationship ending for the second time might seem like the end of the world to you? If we are sure that our relationship with our affair partner has to work out, and that since the two of us have been given this second chance, now we have to do everything possible to make the relationship work, we may end up making decisions based on those considerations alone. And sometimes that may not be terribly consequential. Maybe having lunch with your affair partner tomorrow isn't going to detract from anything else you have going on in your life. Maybe it's just a bit of time out of your day that you can easily spare. But maybe choosing to have lunch with your affair partner means finding a way to get yourself out of an important work event. Or maybe it means ditching out on plans you made with your kid. Or maybe it means extricating yourself from some other important thing that you committed to do and coming up with an elaborate lie for why you have to do this other thing, right? And my point is not that doing this is morally wrong and therefore you shouldn't do it. My point is that prioritizing your affair relationship in this way might have consequences if you're doing it habitually and for a long period of time, and you might not like these consequences. Also, it may get really exhausting and stressful. Keeping your various stories straight takes a lot of work, and although that may be novel and exciting at first, it might not be fun forever. But if you're desperate to make your second chance with your lost love work, you may not be able to think about much other than how you're going to ensure that your relationship with them continues. And if that is what you're doing, it's practically impossible to to step back and make systematic decisions about what you actually want to do about your whole situation. So there's the cruel paradox. What you may want, maybe, is to leave your marriage, pursue an above-board relationship with your affair partner who is your lost love, and live happily ever after with them. Maybe that's what you want. But when you're so desperate to make that second chance with your lost love work, you may not be able to think clearly enough to systematically make any decisions at all. And that's such a tragedy, right? Because your desperation may prevent you from getting what you want. Also, another example, if you aren't in a committed relationship with anyone else, but your affair partner is, you may find yourself deferring to their schedule or to their availability to an extent that you never would if you weren't hell-bent on the idea that you and your beloved are destined to be together or had to make this second attempt at your relationship work or something like that. And again, deferring to someone else's availability isn't bad in any absolute sense or any moral sense, and it might not even create consequences for you that you don't like. Then again, it might. When we get stuck on the idea that we have to be with a particular person, or when we get stuck on the idea that a particular relationship has to work out, we may throw all of our standards for what we want any relationship we're in to be like out the window. And we might not like what we get out of doing that. But if we think we have to do everything possible to make a relationship with a particular person work, we may not be able to see that this is what we're doing. We may not be able to get a clear look at what's going on. If we want to find a way out of this predicament, we have to step back and examine and question what we believe to be true about relationships in general and our specific relationships in particular. To echo what I said earlier, if we believe that we cannot get divorced, is that true? Probably not. It is quite possibly the case that it is not true that you literally cannot get divorced. Now, might it be challenging to get divorced? Yes, but that doesn't mean that you cannot do it. Now, a lot of people fail to see that they actually can get divorced, even if it might be challenging to do so. They go straight to thinking that they truly cannot get divorced. And if that's the belief you hold, that matters. Also, is it true that your second chance relationship has to work out? No, it doesn't have to. Might it be sad if this relationship ended for a second time? Yes, possibly very sad, but that doesn't mean that the relationship has to continue. These may sound like really simple, obvious points, but it's so important for us to recognize and respect the ways we keep ourselves stuck through our own thinking, and sometimes through our thinking that we are scarcely aware of or that seems really innocuous to us. If we want to find our way out of seemingly impossible predicaments, we have to be willing to do the work of examining and challenging our own thinking. We have to root out the thoughts that are keeping us stuck, and we have to adjust them. And it can be really helpful to have a good coach to help you do this. Believe me. The reason why coaching is so valuable is because a good coach can show you how you are keeping yourself stuck and show you how you can get yourself unstuck. And so often, without the help of someone who can astutely observe our thinking, we simply do not recognize the beliefs that we are entertaining that keep us in our self-created prisons. We often fail to see that our own thoughts are what are making our situations seem so impossible to find a way out of. And that's not a criticism of any of us. We can't help but have blind spots. We can't help but fail to see the ways our own thinking keeps us miserable and stuck sometimes. So it's not a problem when you don't see the thoughts that are keeping you in situations you don't like, but you do want to do something about this. And working with a coach is one way to do something about this. Then, once you start to dismantle your narratives about what you have to do or what you can't do, then you can start to think a little bit more systematically about what you want in regards to your current situation and what you're willing to do in the service of what you want. When you're all caught up in your thoughts about not being able to leave your marriage and at the same time not being able to let your lost love get away from you yet again, and when you're stuck in the frenzy of emotion that those kinds of thoughts create, there is no way you're going to be able to think systematically and deliberately about what you want to do. You're probably just going to freak out and engage in behaviors that make your life even more complicated and stressful. But instead of getting lost in elaborate narratives about being destined to be with our truest love since fate brought them back into our lives, but the impossibility of fulfilling that destiny because of the promise we made to our spouse to stay with them forever, we can assess our situation and make decisions. To put it in really simple terms, you could say, okay, the person who I once loved so much came back into my life, and even though I'm pretty happily married, I really want to give things a shot with them, and so I am going to leave my marriage and go after this other relationship. You could just decide to do that. Some people do just decide to do that. They may carefully consider their options, but they don't make the process overly complicated. However, a lot of people don't do that. Instead of making decisions, they get totally lost in what they think makes their situation so complicated. Or they have a very prolonged tantrum about not liking their options. And it's fine to have a little tantrum about not liking your choices. Fair enough. It may indeed seem really hard to choose between a pretty good marriage and pursuing a person you once loved deeply who has come back into your life and presented you with the chance of a lasting relationship with them. But staying in tantrum mode because you think you have a hard choice to make is a form of self-inflicted torture. There are going to be times in life when we don't like our choices. Unless we decide that we're going to love all of the choices we have to make, and for many of us, that is a bridge too far, right? But instead of giving up our power by endlessly indulging in our dislike of making choices that we consider hard, we can say, okay, I don't like my choices here, but I am going to choose, and I am going to take responsibility for moving in a direction instead of staying in limbo or instead of staying in my current situation. Maybe you really don't want to leave your marriage. Maybe it doesn't matter how precious the other person you're involved with is. Maybe you just aren't going to leave your marriage for whatever reasons, and that's all there is to it. So maybe your job is to be willing to let your other person go for a second time. Or maybe you don't want to let your other person go a second time. Maybe you want to give a relationship with them your best shot, even if that means getting divorced and dealing with all that comes with that. Or maybe there are other options too. Maybe you want to have both relationships, and maybe you can in a way that everybody's cool with. That is not impossible. But in order for you to pick any option and pursue it, you're probably going to have to give yourself permission to do something, and maybe multiple things that you don't think you can do or don't think you're allowed to do. And that's why coaching can be so useful, because changing our beliefs about what we can do or are allowed to do can be a pretty significant endeavor. Not an impossible one, but possibly a pretty significant one, a very worthwhile one, however. So even if being married and having an affair with someone who once seemed like your soulmate may seem like an impossible problem to solve, I promise that it isn't. You can dismantle the narratives that are keeping you stuck. You can dismantle the narratives that are keeping you on an emotional roller coaster ride. And then you can carefully examine your situation and what you want, and you can make decisions, and you can deal with everything that comes with making decisions, such as, for instance, feeling a lot of emotions. And I can help you do all of that. Okay, I want to say a little more about the specific kinds of things people tell me when they're considering the possibility that their relationship with their lost love might not work out. And I want to talk a little bit about how some of these common ways of thinking might usefully be adjusted. Sometimes people tell me, if it doesn't work out with this person, I'm never going to love anyone again the way I love them. Or, if it doesn't work out with this person, no one is ever going to love me again the way this person loves me. Or, if this doesn't work out with this person, I'm going to have unfinished business for the rest of my life. Or if it doesn't work out with this person for a second time, I'm always going to feel like something went wrong. Or even better, I'm always going to feel like I was robbed of what should have been mine. Or if it doesn't work out with this person for a second time, I'm always going to wonder what a relationship with this person would have been like if it lasted. Here's the deal, people. It is possible to recognize the uniquely wonderful, uniquely precious aspects of a particular person or a particular relationship, and to cherish what you've shared with someone without buying into any of the ideas I've just mentioned or any similar ideas. It is possible to really love someone and to really want a relationship to work out and to be really sad if it doesn't, without letting that become the narrative that defines your future. Even if you don't like it that the relationship ended, which is fair enough, you can choose to recognize that relationships do end all the time for all kinds of reasons. If your second chance at a relationship doesn't work out, you don't have to make it mean that you aren't fulfilling your destiny to be with a particular person. Also, it is possible for you to really appreciate what you shared with someone without wondering what might have been with them if the relationship had continued. Sometimes people spend a lot of time thinking about what could have been had things worked out with a particular person. You don't have to do that. You can if you want to, but you might prefer to mourn the loss and then start thinking more about the future and the relationship or relationships you want to create going forward. Whether we do it consciously or not, we create the narratives of our lives and of our relationships. You have the opportunity to consciously decide what you want your narrative of your life and your relationships to be. And if a second chance relationship doesn't work out, you get to decide what you want to make that mean. It can be sad without being a tragedy of epic proportions. You can miss your person like crazy, and you can also move forward. You can appreciate what you shared with them and how amazingly great it was without believing that they were the only one for you. You can be really frustrated by the way things ended without believing that the end of your relationship is an indication that your destiny has not been fulfilled or fate has gone awry. Sometimes what it comes down to is this: if we want to have a relationship, we may not get to have it with a particular person. And if we want to have a relationship with a particular person, we may not get to have a relationship at all. If you want to believe that losing your lost love once again means you've lost love itself forever and you like that, that's fine. But if what you truly want is to eventually find yourself in a relationship with someone great, you've got to get your narratives about your lost love in check. Now, I'm going to say this again because it's so important to me to emphasize this. Our connections with specific people can be uniquely precious. Specific relationships can be uniquely wonderful. We may cherish things we've shared with specific people in unique ways or to unique degrees. And the specialness of what we experience with a particular person may be something we really want to appreciate as singular. But sometimes wanting to experience something wonderful as singularly wonderful gets in the way of experiencing more of the wonderful things that life has to offer. So what I want to suggest is that you can deeply appreciate and cherish what you've shared with a particular person, and you can also be open to the possibility of experiencing intensely wonderful things with someone else. If you love the idea of soulmates, why not love the idea of having more than one soulmate? If you love the idea of having a true love, why not love the idea of having more than one true love? If you love the idea that certain people are destined to be together, why not consider the idea that some people might be destined to be together for a certain period of time or for a certain chapter of their lives? Why not consider the idea that you might be destined for another great love, even if one great love is ending or didn't work out the way you'd hoped? As I start to wrap up this episode, I want to note that I've emphasized the difficulties that can come with having an affair with an old lover because I see people struggling mightily with the stuff I've talked about today. But I also want you to know that I've seen people have an affair with an old love, end their marriage, and then live happily ever after with their lost and found love. This happens, and it can be beautiful. People like to say that all's fair in love and war, but I don't know about that. I don't know what's fair and what isn't. What I do know, though, is that all is possible in love. Or maybe it's better to say that a lot of things are possible in love. We've got to be willing to create what we want to experience, but when we're willing to do that, the sky's the limit. So much more is possible than we tend to think. All right, if you want my help dealing with your infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you, let's get to work. There are 2 ways you can have me as your coach. You can enroll in my self-guided course, You're Not the Only One, which contains teachings and assignments that go beyond what I offer on the podcast. Or we can work together one-on-one via Zoom. When we work together one-on-one, our work is rigorous, intimate, consistent, and transformative. If you are serious about making change in your love life, my wise guidance is just what you need to turn what you're dreaming about into your reality. To enroll in my course or to get started working with me one-on-one, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a terrific day. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.